Okay. Good morning and welcome to Daring Dialogues. We normally air at 11 a.m., but we had to start a little bit late today. We are in a mobile business space, so if you hear a lot of noise happening outside, hopefully it won't be too much noise, but just want to give you a heads up. So if you hear some industrial noise outside, that is what is going on. We are excited. This is Motivation Monday, and we have dedicated our Mondays to motivating you, to inspiring you, to giving you something to think about for your week. And today we are going to start off with our word, a word for you for this week to think about, as well as, good morning, tell you a little bit about the movie that we did go to watch that we've been talking about. We started February 1st, which I did not realize was the actual anniversary of James Baldwin's work. And so we read aloud. You can go in our replays and see us reading aloud James Baldwin's work, The Fire Next Time. And right now, out in movie theaters nationwide is his documentary that was put together by the gentleman by the name of Raoul Peck. He actually took Baldwin's book premise, or rather his book proposal, that was 30 pages long, and Baldwin was going to write about his feelings and how he felt about the death of his three friends, and I like to say three black fathers, because that's something that people often forget about these three men that were assassinated in part with our government colluding in on it. And that is the lives of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King. Now, the thing that I find very interesting about this work is a couple of years ago, while I was in my own prayer time, God himself told me that Malcolm and Martin had unfinished work and that they were connecting together. And so that stirred my own research on Martin and Malcolm, and I came to find out through my own research that they actually, did talk with each other. They were actually coming together. They were actually meeting to do some things on a Pan-African level. And so I thought it was very interesting that God himself would tell me that they had an unfinished work in the earth to get done. So that's one of the reasons why I was really interested in seeing this documentary, because James Baldwin adds in Medgar Evers. However, God told me Malcolm, Martin, and Marcus Garvey. So when I went to go see it, I had already been reading some of Baldwin's work, so I was pretty familiar with the kind of tone that he would take in the documentary. I won't go into the details because I do want to encourage people to go see the documentary, but the documentary is out and it's called I Am Not Your Negro. Now, good morning. I picked this up before we went to go see the movie, right at the Books A Million that was there in the mall. And this is actually Baldwin's work plus the director and how he put the documentary together. And I went ahead and got this because in the documentary, some pieces are kind of intertwined, so you can't hear some of the parts of what each person is saying. Like while Malcolm X may be talking in a film clip, the person may be narrating. So I went ahead and got this so that I could go back and read and be more specific with what I was hearing in the documentary. The documentary is excellent. I will say that it is, if something could be done literally to give every white American a free ticket to go see this movie, this documentary, so they would have no excuses, I would highly recommend it. So if you call yourself a white person, white American, Caucasian, European American, however you want to phrase it, I highly recommend that you go see this documentary. One of the things that Raoul Peck is very good at doing is he juxtaposes two alternate universes or two alternate experiences in America. He really does a good job of highlighting what white America has pretty much experienced versus the realities and the perspectives of Black America. And so I think it's a very, very good work that people should check out. I'm trying to figure out how these people are commenting on my broadcast when only people who follow me are supposed to be able to comment. So that's interesting. We'll have to figure that out. All right. So that's what I wanted to say about I Am Not Your Negro. You can go to, I believe, IamNotYourNegro.com or I Am Not Your Negro Film and find out where it is playing in your area, in your neighborhood. Our word for today is exacerbate. Exacerbate. And it actually means to make a problem or situation worse. Now you guys see my little cartoon there, right? Exacerbate. To make a problem or situation worse, right? A good example of this is police in our society often exacerbate a situation, right? They often make a problem or a situation worse, depending on if that officer has proper training and utilizes it. If he doesn't, he can often exacerbate a already bad situation. So that is our vocabulary for today, and we are going to pick up right now with Tony Evans' Detours. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss tomorrow. I know it is Love Fest and Love Day tomorrow, but we're going to get back into talking about singleness on tomorrow, Relationship 101. So you don't want to miss tomorrow's broadcast at 11 a.m. We're going to get it in, and hopefully we're going to learn some more about singleness. Today, we're looking at the proof of detours, the proof of detours. Remember, Tony Evans has been talking about the purpose of detours. We've talked about the temptations, the testings, and the trials that come in detours when God puts you in a place where it seems like your life is out of whack or you're not on the right track. And so he's talking today about proof of detours. If we have enough time, we'll go into his next chapter, which is talking about the presence of detours. But let's jump into the proof of detours. So I hope you have something to drink. I hope you're in a relaxed state. I hope you're in a state of learning as we get into our read aloud for today. The proof of detours. Part of my role as pastor involves mentoring and counseling. With a fairly large church, you can imagine the number of calls I get. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to guide members through various situations in life. I can honestly say I enjoy this aspect of being a pastor immensely. Not too long ago, one of the men from the church came over to my home to meet with me. He had been going through a rough time. As he sat in my family room, head hung low, he lifted his eyes to mine and said, "Pastor, I feel as if my detour has met another detour and they got married and had a baby." In other words, he felt as if he were running into detour after detour after detour, and that the detours merely kept replicating and multiplying rather than taking him anywhere meaningful. It is easy to feel that way when God is taking you to your destiny. As I mentioned before, God rarely ever moves you on from where you are to where he wants you to be without taking you on a road trip first. He doesn't go from A to B to C. He goes from A to Z to T to F to R to D, meandering you to your destiny. Before you can ever get to where God wants you to be, he has to do some twists and turns. This is because in life, as it is often on the road, detours exist because construction is taking place. So we want to ask ourselves, what is God constructing in me today? What is God constructing in me today? When you are on a highway and there's a detour, is usually because workers are trying to fix, build, correct, or improve something. So think about those 4 areas of your life: fix, build, correct, or improve. What is God trying to fix in me? What is God trying to build in me? What is God trying to correct in me? What is God trying to improve in me? One of the things that I believe that God did in my own life when I went through a detour for several years was He began to correct my notion of my belief in Christians. And the reason why I say that, and that my belief needed to be corrected, is because for many, many, many years, I assumed that everyone who said they were a Christian were in fact Christians. Like, I took that for granted, that if you said I'm a believer of Christ, you said you were a follower of Christ, then I would give you an automatic benefit of the doubt. Well, that unfortunately proved to be detrimental for my life. And I learned some very hard lessons because I really kind of took people at their word. Okay, you say you're a Christian. And then I would begin to experience the fallout of their actions. And once I experienced the fallout of their actions, then I realized they could not possibly be a Christian because of the way that they were treating me, because of the way that they were treating other people in the body of Christ, because they did not exemplify Christian character. So that was something that God wanted to correct in me. He wanted to say to me, Shantae, just because someone comes to you and they seem nice and they say they're a Christian and they say they love God, doesn't make it the case. You have to examine the fruit. You have to examine the evidence, and you can't just give details about your purpose and your vision to everyone who says they're a Christian. I'm going to say that again. You cannot give details about your purpose and your vision to everyone who says they are a Christian. Okay? So that was what I learned. And unfortunately, I learned it the hard way. I learned some hard lessons. Thank God none of the lessons killed me. But I still have scars. And I'm not talking about emotional scars. I'm talking about physical scars from the lessons that I learned. All right. So what Tony Evans here is pointing out is very, very pertinent to understanding your detours. All right. Let's keep reading. Similarly, God will take us on a detour because He is constructing something in our lives as well. Send me an email, reachshante@gmail.com, and I'll answer that in detail for you. All right. Similarly, God will take us on a detour because He is constructing something in our lives as well. Or you can email me based on the email in my bio. Either one of those. All right. Granted, detours are anything but convenient. They take you out of the way. They are longer than you originally had planned to travel, but they are necessary. God is more interested in your development than your arrival. He cares more for your character than your comfort. He cares more for your purity than your productivity. In this chapter, I want us to look at the ways you can use to help you determine and confirm that you truly are on a detour rather than simply experiencing a spot of bad luck. So he definitely differentiates between, are you just having a bad period in time, life happens, or is this a God ordained or God designed detour that's supposed to help you fix, build, correct, or improve something in your life. Okay? How can you discern that you're not under the circumstances of normal life and consequences, but rather in a situation that God himself has guided you into? There are several ways you can know this. I want to start with the reason for the suffering you may be experiencing. All right? If and when you are suffering for doing good rather than doing bad, we also call that being persecuted for righteousness. You can know that you are in God's plan of a detour. Remember, after Joseph had worked in his master Potiphar's house for some time, he began to earn Potiphar's trust. So much so that Joseph was over pretty much everything in his house. Yet, despite such great performance, right, and reliable work, he eventually wound up in jail. So when people say, why do bad things happen to good people? Joseph is a prime example. He has done nothing wrong. He has served his master. He has worked diligently. But guess what? Good old Potiphar's wife had her eye on him for other reasons and other purposes. And because he would not give in to that, he finds himself in jail. Potiphar's wife had noticed that Joseph was attractive, so she made advances at him. Trying to figure out how these people are still getting in my space. She made advances at him day after day. However, Joseph was wise enough to pass on the past. He was wise enough from God's perspective, that is. Good morning. From man's perspective, that decision to refuse the request of his master's wife landed him on the hot seat and ultimately in another pit, as she, in her pain of rejection, accused him of rape. We read, when his master heard the story of that his wife told him, "These are the things your slave did to me," he was furious and had him thrown into prison where the king's prisoners were confined. So Joseph was there in prison. Today we are reading from Detours by Tony Evans, The Unpredictable Path to Your Destiny. All right. So here's the thing. As I was reading this, one of the things that God was showing me in this, he said, on a detour, you will get noticed by delayers and derailers. Most of us don't want to be noticed by the wrong people. I don't know about you, but I tend to dress a certain way, right? I don't come on Periscope with my boobs all out because we already have people on social media demanding to see your boobs, right? Or demanding for you to show your belly and all this other crazy stuff. So I try to dress in a way that is not going to draw attention to my body parts, because I know there are crazy people out in the world. Joseph, the scripture plainly says that Joseph was a handsome and good looking man. So regardless of what Joseph had on, he looked good. He looked good enough for Potiphar's wife to be drawn to him and wanted to come on to him daily. So it wasn't just one time. He had to daily refuse her advances. And I know men get a bad rap, but there are women in the world that are the vixen, like Potiphar's wife, right? So on a detour, you will get noticed by delayers. You will get noticed by people who have come to derail your purpose, meaning they want to get you off purpose. And so it is very important for you to recognize when you're coming into contact with people who want to delay you or who want to derail you. Again, we talked about this a little bit on Friday in our financial wealth session, when people call you and they say, "Hey, are you busy?" What did we learn? We learned that what? We don't say, "Oh, no, not really." We say, "I am not busy, but I am in control of my time." So you've got to, in other words, set boundaries. When you notice that somebody is calling you, when you notice that somebody's trying to meet with you, when you notice that somebody's trying to engage with you, but they wind up delaying you in purpose, or they wind up delaying or derailing your purpose, or derailing the things that you're supposed to get done, and you see this pattern happening repeatedly with one or two different people, that's when you got to say, let me evaluate who this person is. Because every time I come into their space, or every time they call me, or every time we meet up, there's some kind of delay happening in my life, and there's some kind of derailment happening in my life, which means that you have to pay attention to your own self, and you have to pay attention to your own life patterns, is what I call them. So you have to pay attention to your life patterns. Yes, he does. And so he uses people, right? The enemy does use people. Sometimes they're used and they don't even know they're being used. But if you know every single time around the same month, right, that certain people come into your space, maybe you haven't heard from them in 3 to 6 months, and all of a sudden they pop back up at the same seasons of your life, and next thing you know, you're derailed again until they disappear, and then they reappear around the same time of life. That means you need to check your life patterns, and you need to do something different. And the reason I say that is I'm speaking from experience, okay? Let me stop my video and do part 2 for my